An intriguing use of genres. Based on its marketing, it came across as a kind of exploitation film, possibly sexploitation, considering where its star Raquel Welch was in her career at the time and how she was perceived. Regardless, Hannie Caulder is a beautifully shot western, greatly influencing the harsh grit established in the spaghetti western, a kind attuned with cowpoke of a lesser moral nature. Anti-heroes for protagonists reign supreme as a direct byproduct of an amoral frontier. The picture is very much a revenge film, or rather, a subgenre called the rape revenge films, which became acknowledged in the 70s and 80s. Consider Sudden Impact, the fourth installment of the Dirty Harry franchise that echoes a similar narrative frame. Hannie Caulder, which begins cruel and comic, gradually becomes gentler and more serious, and by the time the initial spirit of outrage has subsided, it transforms into something rather melancholic. The film has turned into a fairly moving study of what it means to be cursed by having to pursue a mission instead of a life. In the Wild West, vicious but bumbling bandit brothers Emmett, Frank, and Rufus Clemens botch a heist, and in anger they rape local woman Hannie Caulder, murder her spouse, and destroy her home. Set on retribution, Hannie seeks out bounty hunter Thomas Lufus Price, who helps her learn to shoot, a skill she'll need as she attempts to track down and take out the merciless Clemens brothers. There's more than a bit of Sergio Leone infused in the film's strong, escalated opening. The title sequence, certainly in some regard a homage to spaghetti westerns, gives immediate complementary comparisons to the Dollars trilogy. There's a smattering collage of dated animation, radiant colour splotches, and a hidebound western score that appropriately conveys the genre's tone. It allows for the momentary establishment of the narrative's protagonist. The film has no quarrels drawing such inspiration, heavily influenced by its Italian relative. In fact, the British-made picture seamlessly discards the more traditional American route of Western, in favour for a highly stylistic malaise of violence and mayhem in the Old West. The film essentially tries to outdo the violent and perverted tendencies of the previous decade, with lots of blood and a particularly nasty rape scene, the most confronting scene of the movie. Uncomfortable is an understatement here. Perhaps the limiting vision of the act itself is what creates such an unnerving atmosphere of dread. Most of the focus is on the greasy and delighted faces of her rapist, and then the camera sits outside her home as the assault continues. Potent and unsettling, it demands outrage from the viewer. The sequence is filmed with an almost total lack of subtlety or restraint. Hannie Caulder presents a natural justification for revenge early on. The tale carries momentous weight. The film decides to dive further into the present and unforeseen disturbances that await once committing to a mission of vengeance. This is a rape revenge western that succeeds, largely due to the strength of its characters. The key element is a strong performance by the much underrated Robert Culp as a bearded spectacled bounty hunter hired by Welch to turn her into a proficient gunfighter who can get even with the thugs who ruined her life. He gives her the shooting lesson she's asking for, warning her at the same time of the ultimate futility of the revenge mission she has planned. It harkens back to what Confucius once stated, maxim being, "He who seeks revenge digs two graves." Culp's wonderfully reserved performance provides the movie with exactly the right counterbalance for the outlandish atmosphere, which will be discussed later. He develops a genuine interest in Hannie's welfare, not necessarily because he has a romantic interest in her, but just simply because he cares, which is why he tries to persuade her out of pursuing the Clement brothers. I have a suspicion that Quentin Tarantino must have based Christoph Waltz's character from Django Unchained on Culp's role. The similarities are unmistakable. The shooting lessons are wisely nested in a carefully handled interlude involving Christopher Lee as a gunsmith who lives south of the border with his wife and a passo of children. It's also a real treat to see Christopher Lee pop up in a role as usually something he's not recognised for. His Bailey is a man living his life on his own terms, where clientele seek him out along the Gulf Shore, which is some of the most beautiful scenes in the movie. And it's both bizarre and cool to see him working alongside Culp and Welch. This is all handled with so much care that we seem to have wandered into another movie. With Ernest Borgnine, Jack Allen, and Stropher Martin playing the villains, the Three Stooges-style comedy seems rather inappropriate, misplaced even, considering the sway the tone of the narrative takes as a personal revenge picture. Ineffective and downright annoying are the antics of these antagonists, who are too dysfunctional to accomplish much as an outlaw band. At one point they blow up a safe and all the money that's inside. The endless bickering of the Clemens brothers may strike some as odd. Poor slapstick seamlessly lessens the overall threat these bandits may have established near the beginning of the film. It's hard to fathom the utter incompetence these men possess, a hanging would have resulted sooner rather than later. Here we follow a woman who's been sexually assaulted and discarded, which is a tale with a lot of weight to it. And then we have these three derelict brothers who have very little value in life, and yet they supply the comic relief of the movie. It's almost like two movies spliced into one. Hannie Caulder is a western that showcases Raquel Welch at the peak of her beauty on screen. In many respects it's certainly recognisable for being one of, if not the most noteworthy performances depicting a female gunslinger. I was particularly fond of the poncho Hannie sports, reminiscing again on the Dollars trilogy. An interesting point to consider, Hannie Caulder is never really given the opportunity to exact revenge on her own. As she pursues her rapist, you can hear the helpful assistance of her mentor, like the way Obi-Wan Kenobi assisted Luke Skywalker destroy the Death Star in Star Wars, reminding her what to do. And there's also the physical assistance from a Man in Black type character, listed as the Preacher, played by an uncredited Stephen Boyd, which communicates to the viewers that, although this is one of the first westerns revolving around a female gunslinger, the screenwriter/filmmaker never intended for Hannie Caulder to be capable of dispensing justice on her own. The explanation is perhaps the act of revenge itself is never something easy to serve out alone. Hannie Caulder remains a fascinating concoction of genres that sometimes feels misplaced, yet finds the right tone as it goes along. The film is simply gorgeous to look at, an embodiment to the Western spirit, that beneath rugged landscapes and fading morality, a sense of beauty can still be found buried within. The influence of spaghetti westerns is undeniable. It treats the source material with a kind of mature appreciation. An underrated performance by Robert Culp always helps tighten the weary screenplay. Raquel Welch evidently finds her place among Western folktale, being recognised as one of the first notable female gunslingers. This rape revenge western delves into the costly repercussions that the pursuit of vengeance will bring, for it is loneliness that awaits on the path to peace. The movie is the kind that is appreciated long after its original US release, and has been discussed and examined by certain film scholars and aficionados, not to mention Quentin Tarantino. It definitely had the impact of many movies that came out after.
Win or lose, you lose, Hannie Caulder.